It is 2 dots. It's actually a game. We don't normally do games. It's a free game. There are in-app purchases if you want to, and it's one of those things where you play and you lose a certain number of lives, and you either have to wait until 24 hours until your life comes back, or you pay 69p and you get another life or whatever. So these are notoriously addictive, so they do come with a bit of a health warning. But we thought we'd talk about this because it's a really nice little simple game. So I'm going to show you a very little demo. 2 Dots is a sequel to a game called Dots. And 2 Dots is similar but different. So, give me 1 second while I set my phone up. This is my phone screen. So 2 Dots is on the top left there. It's a free game from the App Store, and it's very simple in its premise. And it has a nice kind of little styling about it. It's very much kind of pick up and play when you're at the bus stop, or you're just commuting or travelling or just at home or whatever. And all it does, it's a puzzle game, but all you have to do is clear dots on a screen. So the best way to show you this is perhaps to pick an earlier level, which was level 2 I just tapped. And all you need to do is draw a line from one dot to the other of the same colour, and the dot will disappear. So, for example, if I go on the left-hand side here, and you can see the line I'm drawing, if I draw that line up to those yellow dots disappear. That's what you have to do. It's very simple, but it's actually surprisingly fun. It'll take you quite a lot of time to do, and you can do lots of little tricks, like if you make a square, if you do a line that comes back on itself, all the dots of that same colour disappear. And at the moment, at the top, you can see I have to clear a certain number of dots in a certain number of moves. I'm well on course for doing that, and as you do so, you just complete the level and then you're done. It's surprisingly fun to play, it doesn't take up much time, and the best thing is it's free. So if you're looking for a little time filler, we would thoroughly recommend 2 Dots. Very simple, very straightforward. Great fun and well worth doing. The levels, that was level 2, just to be clear, that was, oh yeah, I'm very good. So that was level 2. There are something like 64 levels at the moment, and they get progressive, and 3 levels are downloaded all the time, they get progressively harder. So rather than show you a difficult level that I can't do, I'll just leave you to play and explore. But the levels get much harder because they start putting things in the way, like, I don't know if this one's got them actually, they start to put barriers in the way so you can't draw lines across certain places. So this one, yeah, there we go. So this one is much more complicated. Same kind of thing, really nice. Still got to clear at the top, 20 purple, 20 blue, 20 green, 20 yellow dots. I can clear all the green dots by making a square. I can make a blue square if I make that 4 by 1. Oh, I messed it up. It's the pressure. Really nice, really fun, free. A nice thinking kind of puzzle game with some detail, with some good strategy, and when you start to get into working out how it really works. The key thing is to make those squares and make those lines that go back. So that's our little app snapshot for today.
They should have that in sort of Specsavers or something, shouldn't they?
It's exactly that kind of thing. The first version, Dots, is a kind of, there's no puzzles, it's just a kind of endless thing. It just gives you a screen, and you basically keep going and get as high score as you can in a certain time limit. But 2 Dots is more of a puzzle game, and it's certainly much more appealing. There are a couple of these. Threes is another one which you may have heard of, which is a bit sort of cerebral in its kind of puzzle intent. You have to make multiples of 3 by sliding numbers around. We might show you that in a future meeting. Again, it's free, it's really nicely designed, and it's a nice time filler when you're, as I say, waiting for the bus, or someone else at home's got a football on, or whatever you're not interested in. 2 Dots is a good little recommendation for a time filler. So, the news, there's been loads since our last meeting. So the first piece of news is in a slightly surprising move, or at least most of the committee was surprised. Apple have bought headphones manufacturer Beats, in the States. That's not hugely surprising. The price is quite surprising. It's $3 billion, and that's the largest acquisition they've made. I'm sure we'll be hearing about why and the whys and the wherefores in future meetings. At the moment, we're not really sure what that might mean. It won't be concluded till the end of the year anyway, but it's quite possible there'll be some kind of branding or some kind of new software that will come out of it. Obviously, revolving around music, potentially streaming, potentially looking at the kind of the stuff that Beats have developed. Anyone own a pair of Beats headphones? Oh, interesting. You're the one. Because most people that in this country anyway don't seem to. I see a few kids around with them, and that's partly one of the reasons suggested why Apple might have bought them. But they're certainly much more popular in the States. Okay, second piece of Apple news. So Apple held their worldwide developer conference since we last met, and they released no new products, no new hardware or anything to play with, and no new software as such to us, but then that's not the reason for this particular conference. The D in that obviously stands for developer, and so they released an awful lot of stuff for developers, including previews of their next versions of the operating system. So the first big piece of news is that probably September, although they never say the date, they always say fall, probably in September, OS 10 will be upgraded. So if you've got Mavericks or Snow Leopard or Mountain Lion or whatever, OS 10 will be upgraded to the next version, which is going to be called Yosemite. It's quite radically different in its look compared to previous versions, and I'll show you what this means. So obviously Apple are now going for, instead of big cats, because they kind of ran out and they have an issue with the cats that are remaining, they're going for place names in California, and Yosemite is their next OS 10 release. So this is what Yosemite looks like, and it's not actually particularly clear. Can you flip lights off? It's not actually particularly clear on the screen, but it's had quite a big visual refresh, and you'll see what this is in a minute because I'll show you their little launch movie. There are a few things that are particularly interesting. The first thing that will mainly grab people, I think, though, is that it does look different. They've changed the system font. They've changed the system font to Helvetica Neue. From, was it Lucinda Grande or whatever font it was, those of you that are font geeks. It is different and it looks different. They've also made it quite a bit lighter. They've changed the iconography, and they've kind of cleaned it all up a little bit, and I'll show you their video in a second. So here's another kind of screenshot of it. There's a bit of translucency. I think it's early days, but the general reports from the people, the beta testers and stuff, and developers that are using it, is that it's quite positive. It works quite nicely. There are a few exciting features. In fact, that previous slide was probably better, which are worth talking about. In the top right, you can see a phone call. One of the new features of Yosemite, if you have an iPhone, with OS 8 in, you'll be able to use your Mac in the same way you use your phone. In other words, if your phone is upstairs charging and someone rings you, you'll be able to answer it on your Mac. If you're downstairs or on your laptop or wherever. Same thing, you can send text messages and stuff from your Mac, not just text messages to people using iMessage, text messages to anybody that's in your phone book. So basically your phone, one of the main themes between OS 10 Yosemite and iOS 8 is that the two things talk to each other really well. So if you have an iPhone and you have Yosemite, you will not, as far as I can see it, probably need to take your phone out of the pocket if you're working on your computer at home, and same with your iPad. So you should be able to, take, receive text messages, etc., straight from the iPad as they're all linking together in a feature they're calling either handoff or continuity. I'm not quite entirely clear about what the difference is.
Parts of the same thing.
Yeah, but there's also other things as well. So if you're starting an email on your phone, and then for whatever reason you get off the bus or you walk into home, you'll be able to launch OS 10. In fact, not only launch it, there'll be a little icon next to the little Finder icon, because it will know that you're halfway through writing an email. If you're writing a document in Pages, it'll know you're halfway through writing a document in Pages, and it'll pick up exactly where you left off. Chances are that will probably work for media as well, like movies and songs and all this kind of stuff. And it works the reverse too. You're working on a document or you're working on an email on your Mac, and then you need to go out. Your phone will know where you are, and you'll be able to pick up exactly where you left off from those two, from that position. So Apple are kind of leveraging their position as building the whole stack from the computer, the software, and the phone to talk to each other in a way that perhaps is quite interesting and is quite unique. But at the moment, as I say, it's a little bit early days, and obviously we haven't tested it yet. So a couple of other things I perhaps should have mentioned. They're also redesigning Spotlight a little bit more, making Spotlight much more powerful, so you'll be able to search the web and stuff using Spotlight rather than having to launch a browser. And notifications which sit on the side, oh of course are disabled because I'm in presentation mode. Notifications which sit on the side are going to include little kind of plug-in widgets, for want of a better word, from third-party developers, so you can put in things like sports or weather or whatever from the BBC. So yeah, quite a big change. The other thing they announced was iOS 8. Not a huge amount on iOS 8, beyond what I was saying already about the continuity type handoff features. There are some tweaks. The multitasking screen now has your pictures of favourites across the top, so you can rapidly access people if you want to call them or email them or whatever. And there are a few kind of key features that, again, this is just stolen from the website, apologies for the quality of this particular image. So there are 6 or so kind of main features that they're pushing. The first one, QuickType. Apple are redesigning the keyboard so that it gives you word suggestions. So that a bit like if you've seen the BlackBerry keyboard in operation, for want of a better kind of description. But it's very clever, it's very contextual. So if you're texting, or if you're sending an email to somebody at work, it knows you're in work, it knows who you're conversing with, it'll use the appropriate language to describe that, and on stage, and again this is all conjecture because we haven't seen this, on stage there was an example of if you start to type "the meeting was", and you're typing it to a colleague at work, it might suggest words like productive or detailed or thorough. If you're texting or if you're texting your other half. And you start "the meeting was", it might suggest other words that you may use. Yet to see how this works, but it's an interesting kind of concept and one that should be interesting. They're also allowing third-party keyboards as well. So I've had this for some time. So there's some keyboards where you can type by swiping your finger around, which is probably the most famous one, rather than actually typing. And we'll do some demos. There are some new stuff on family sharing. You can share your iTunes account now with colleagues and things. We'll talk more about this later when it's out. And iCloud Drive, that Apple seem to be relenting a little bit, and if I were to sum up iCloud Drive in one word, it will probably be Dropbox. It strikes me as the same kind of thing, an exposed file system. So you'll be able to save your files on your iPad or on your iPhone in iCloud Drive, and you'll be able to access it from your computer or from a browser from any machine in the world, and it should give that little bit of depth if you want it. One of the drawbacks or one of the issues that some people have with iCloud is that it saves files in little silos associated with each application. iCloud Drive should break that. You should be able to access files from any part of the machine and see the file structure. There's a and this might be a transition, so I might not be able to stop it. That's all right. There's a health app, perhaps looking towards an iWatch or something along those kinds of lines, but basically an app to monitor all your health. At the moment, it collates things from lots of sources. So if you've got a fitness tracker or a pulse sensor when you do exercise, or you regularly take your blood if you're diabetic from that point of view, there are lots of apps that do that for you. Health at the moment is just an app that kind of collates all that information together. Continuity I've talked about, it allows you to continue from one from the other, and big updates to Spotlight along the same kind of vein that we were talking about before. So iOS 8 should look very similar, but should have quite a few tweaks behind in the background. Other things, and we don't have to dwell on this too much, it was a developer conference, but they released an awful lot of developer tools. Apple's developer tools tend to end in Kit. So Photo Kit, you can kind of guess what that's about. They're opening up iOS 8 quite significantly, whereas in the past, if you were in one application, you could only work in that one application. Things like PhotoKit and the camera API mean that if you're in your photos, if you're in your camera, rather than launching, I don't know, Waterlog or whatever app you have to put filters on your photos as a separate application, you'll be able to launch it from within the photos, put the filters in, and then close it from within the photos. In other words, much more akin to how you'll work on a desktop rather than on an iPhone. So it should be quite significant differences to your workflow. HealthKit, HomeKit and CloudKit, well the clues are kind of in the name. One's about health, one's about home automation. Burglar alarm, central heating, light bulbs, all that kind of stuff, which will be a big kind of growth area in the next few years. And CloudKit basically allows developers to store more stuff in the cloud. Touch ID, if you have a Touch ID enabled device, will be opened up as well, so chances are you'll be able to pay for stuff using your fingerprints. And the camera API is now fully open, so developers can make more use of it. which should mean if you're interested in taking photos with your iPhone or iPad, you should suddenly have a load of new apps making use of all these new features. So I'm sorry that's kind of a kind of quick whistle stop really, but at the moment everything is kind of in beta, it's announced, and because it's in beta, any one of these features could be removed before it is actually released. One other piece of information, there might be two actually, Apple have now released a cheaper iMac. It now starts at £900 instead. It's an interesting one because it's the kind of headline stat I've read about it is you're saving 20% off, but you get a 50% reduction in performance.
Yeah.
It's kind of okay because a 50% reduction in performance might still mean it's okay, but it's certainly a low-end, cheaper Mac, and you'd have to think carefully about if that's a good chance for you. It's not upgradable like the other versions, but there is a cheaper version that's available. And oh yeah, no, of course.
Yeah.
Of course. So the other thing, the main reason we had to rejig things for this evening is that Aperture have announced that. Sorry, not Aperture. Apple have announced that they are going to cease development of Aperture. Aperture is Apple's kind of prosumer level photo organising and editing application, kind of the next step up from iPhoto, and they're going to stop developing for it. Now, it might sound like a bad thing, particularly if you're heavily invested in Aperture, but actually I think that our advice is, at the moment, certainly not to panic at all about it. It will certainly be supported for Yosemite, and I would be surprised if it wasn't supported in the next version of OS X. So at the very least, you've probably got 2 and a bit years still using the current version of Aperture. So our advice would be to not do anything at the moment. Apple have announced that they're going to be releasing a new kind of Photos app with lots of the features that are in Aperture, but basically Aperture and iPhoto effectively are going to be killed, culled, or perhaps want a better word, and merged into this new Photo app. There are alternatives. The most popular, and it's actually much more popular than Aperture anyway, is Adobe's Lightroom, which is the icon next to it. We may do a talk about Lightroom in the future.